How do you counter Felix and the insane melee nukes we have right now? I've got a ton of stuff for you guys. I've got how you build your teams. I've got, of course, a melee frontliner tier list and a whole bunch of other tips and tricks that you can use to hopefully get out of this mess that IS has made. But first, I'd love to know in the comments, who is your go-to melee frontliner right now? Are you just going Omnitank and hoping you can take out Felix, or is there some extravagant way you're using? Let me know in the comments. So in order to look at this, we need to really dissect the problem. And the issue is Sigurd plus Felix. They are an amazing 1-2 punch, and unfortunately not in that good way. One of the big things is they both have insane killing power, but one of them has a ton of space to move and area of effect damage. The other has crazy true damage and warping with the aid of Celica, and they both have extra actions. So these units just keep coming, and they're very hard to kill when you put them on a team. And in particular, we're going to be looking at Astra Season because I think that is the harder of the two. That is a situation where the opposing team can put debuffs on you, but you cannot put them back. It really makes it hard to speed stack or anything else, especially when you count in all of these extra actions that are happening. I'm not sure what's going to happen for IS to counter this. I'm a little worried about what that looks like, but for now, we have a bit of a mess to solve. So let's talk about the gauntlet that I've put each of these melee frontliners through to measure their success. So you just saw the defense layout. These are the individual units, and the thing I really want you to pay attention to is a lot of this is base kit. Micaiah has Breath of Life, which is important on her, but otherwise, I mean, Sigurd and Felix are out of the box amazing, which makes it difficult because a lot of these tanks need extra help. It becomes more expensive to have an offense than it does to have a defense, which is worrisome. The other thing that I haven't even talked about is Hathran, which this unit is crazy, and with the aid of Deep Wounds, really puts a hurt on any opposing tank team. Let's look at the team construction though, and the first one I have are the Saviors, and listen, the issue with Saviors has always been you don't get a support slot. Essentially, you have 3 mythics, you get any support that they offer, but the other unit is a bonus unit in that lineup. That means you really have to rely on the units you have, and that other one is a toss-up. The Omnitank teams do have an additional support. You see, each of these teams have Breath of Life on them. On the support for most of my Omni tanks, I have put on Arcane Lumera. Understand that different units do better with different bonuses though. One of the examples is Erica, who has Vantage and therefore doesn't really need Lumera's stuff. We'll look at the build I'm using next. I'm not using any enhancements. Not everyone can afford crazy amounts of Dragon Flowers or 5 summoner support slots with Fey Pass. I have a +1 merge. All of these units are debuffed by Micaiah, so you have Discord and Exposure. You also have an Omni -7, which is unfortunate. You also have a +5 from Plumeria. Breath of Life support. Divine Vein Stone is just on the Omni tanks, and I have called out Unpierceable DR here because I think it is so important on whatever unit you end up with. But Shield Fighter is definitely the best of those that we have right now. But it's time, let's talk about Brave Felix and who survives him.
Where's my weapon?
Does Brave Felix need an introduction or description? I'll give a brief one, but this unit is nuts. The amount of things this unit does is crazy. The big thing that Felix does is survive, though. That's something we don't give enough credit to, and where this comes into play is versus Omni tanks. The ability to come in, survive an attack from most Omni tanks, and then go around them and take out supports is really annoying, especially with Celica Ring, and I still believe that that is probably the worst addition to Fey in a very long time. Felix without Celica Ring is a much, much different story, but I want to talk about the way that you counter Felix. We're going to get right to it, and we're going to talk about Shield Fighter because this skill is amazing. I have put this on the years-old Robin, and we're going to watch the fireworks. Now, not every defense is made quite this way. I have frozen out Sigurd so that we can just see the matchup here with Felix. He comes in, he doubles, but because Shield Fighter is amazing, does next to no damage and just continues that way. This is such a big deal, but I want to warn you, the problem with Shield Fighter is you don't get a lot of killing power back. You'll notice Felix has a ton of life left after this, especially with how many hits he just got. 23 is pretty spectacular. Now, all the units come in, and at the end of the day, you only get rid of Micaiah. That is a lot of team left and a lot of mistakes that can be made one way or another. It is difficult to use, but at least you survived the initial onslaught. What this means is turn 2 is going to be much harder and much more important than it used to be. So let's take a brief look at the current armors that survive Felix. And very, very important, I've put in their B skill because that is the most important skill right now for survival. What you'll notice is as long as they have Shield Fighter, they do just fine. There's different degrees of good, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But the first thing you have to do is survive. Anyone who doesn't have Shield Fighter does not, and that is the way it goes with Felix. It is unfortunate that this is such a premium skill, but I would put a high priority on it when it comes back around. Let's talk about the other way you deal with Felix, and that is by attempting to outspeed him, which is very, very difficult. There are two things that are going on in this clear that you'll notice. The first is you have to understand the rules of warping. You notice that these units are situated so that Felix cannot jump and get the back line. That is very, very important. I also do want to put out that it still took Tamara 2 combats to take out Felix, even though she outsped him. That is the kind of meta we're in. The other is, again, that next turn is really important. There is a lot of team left to deal with for Tamara, and so you have to play smart. That means these matches take a long time and they are very thought out. We're out of the days of Ike where you just set him in there and just watch him demolish the other team. This is not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes it can be a very frustrating thing. Still, Tamara is an excellent unit and can handle this. The thing that you might have noticed, though, is I'm not using a bonus unit. This last season was Tamara's bonus season, so you could use her in that slot. She really needed both of those bonuses, Robin and Micaiah, to be able to outdo Felix. Otherwise, you're in trouble. What this means is either, for a lot of these Omnitanks, you need to have a mythic bonus unit, which some of you have, or you need to have some bonus unit that contributes in a way that helps Tamara outspeed Felix. That is a tough thing and is an extra hurdle that she has to go over, as well as most of the Omnitanks on this list. If we're looking at pure wins here, you have Ike, Asker, who is unexpectedly amazing, and I wish I had him so that I could show you the actual results on a map, but he is very good. And we have Tamara. The clear losses are, unfortunately, Sita, Erica, unfortunately Corin and Dimitri are also on that list. I will say that it is possible to get enough speed on Sita and Erica, but it still is very difficult to get everything you need done, and you have to watch out for warping. You just saw that it took Tamara 2 different rounds of combat to take that unit out, so just keep that in mind. You still very much have to worry about mechanics in the game.
So it ends here.
So the second unit that I really want to look at is Sigurd, and again, the nefarious thing about this is that Felix is excellent at taking out Omnitanks because he can warp around and get the back line. Sigurd is excellent at taking out saviors. It's why they work so well together. And I mean, you guys have seen these skills at this point. The big thing you want to pay attention to is instant AoEs, and it's a growing wind pattern, so it's fairly large. And of course, 2 extra movement. You add on someone like Note or Dagger, and it is crazy the amount of space this unit covers. The fact that this unit also gets Gale Force just makes him an absolute terror. But let's look at how some Omnitanks do, and in particular, let's watch Ike. I wanted to make sure I included Ike just so that I could answer the question, can Ike still work? And the answer is absolutely yes. This is an incredible unit. But again, we talked about it, you really have to understand mechanics. This is the same deal where we are positioning ourselves so that you cannot get warped through the back door. Now, first up, Sigurd comes in, and one of the other things, and this is knowing the mechanics, Sigurd does not get a second hit if he doesn't damage more than one unit. So we've positioned Ike in such a way that Sigurd does not get Gale Force. That is huge. Next, we have Felix come in and take him almost all the way down, but it's not quite enough. And the funny thing is, the rest of these combats are going to build Ike back up. Basically, you can use Ike, but you really have to know mechanics. Now, does this Sigurd finally take out Ike? Yes. The problem with Ike is that he's leaving units around. The thing with Ike was always he can only hit once, so his killing power is very, very important. He needs to be able to one-shot units. That means that I have got to have one amazing cleanup coming my way. And remember, I can't hit most things with melee because that Nagi has near save. That means Sigurd comes around, does a loop-de-loop, gets the full amount of his bonuses, and finishes Ike off. But I'm fairly certain if you sat here long enough, you could come up with a better clear for that. The question is, can you come up with it on the spot when you're in the moment? Sometimes that answer is yes, and sometimes that answer is no. The last Omnitank I want to look at is Sita here, and this is the same setup. We're going to take Sita out. I just want you to see how exactly these interactions work, because this is one of the more interesting ones. Remember, she gets a lot of interesting things, and you can see she does not outspeed Felix, but Felix doesn't outspeed her either, which is... that's a good thing. That is a very hard thing to get done. The problem is, Sita again leaves a lot of people lying around. Nagi comes in, and once Nagi is in there, that means you can't use any melee units because her shield fighter is going to stop you from doing most of your damage. But you can see Sita does fairly well versus all of this, especially versus Sigurd, who she takes no damage from on that AoE, which is incredible. That is so good. Now, what do we do? Because we're worried about warping and everything else. Probably the thing to do would have been to spread out a little more, but there is still a lot to take care of, and it points back to that whole thing. Turn 2 is a lot harder now. So keep that in mind as you're doing things. You really need to pay attention to your positioning and worry about what's going to happen in turn 2. In this particular, I should not have smashed the block behind Sita. I should have filled up the row underneath Felix and probably could have kept on going and done more damage to more units. But this is something that takes practice and patience. Those are tough to come by sometimes when you're trying to log in and play your 5-minute match. So where does that leave us with the Omnitanks versus Sigurd? And we saw Sita does amazingly, Asker again does amazingly, and Erica really does a fantastic job on this unit for all the reasons you're thinking. We make fun of the color triangle a lot, but to be honest, it plays a big role in the meta right now. That 20% extra damage is no joke and helps Erica out a lot along with the Vantage. She is very much made to take out Sigurd if she can get enough damage on him, which can be tough but is very doable. As far as the losses, I mean, you guys saw Ike. Tamara's in that boat. Corin and Dimitri, unfortunately, are both in that boat as well. For our near save representative, we're going to pull out Gnaw, and this is a really common configuration that you're going to see where basically they give the entire team free reign and you have absolutely nowhere to hide. So you can't take a lot of the advantage of a lot of the terrain with the Omnitanks like we were doing. It leaves you 2 far saves, basically. So, you can see Sigurd comes in and smacks Gnaw, but not very well. Like, this is pretty impressive on Gnaw's part. Gnaw is an excellent near save. The problem is Sigurd keeps coming, and that second AoE on Gnaw is not great. The real problem is Sigurd went around and got to a spot where Breath of Life didn't hit. This is another thing you've really got to pay attention to. There is so much movement in these two units that they can find little chinks in the armor. It means you have to make sure you have things like Breath of Life available to every space that the near save can defend. That being said, she did kill Sigurd, but she didn't kill Felix, and Felix ran rampant over the rest of the team. Mostly, I am not a fan of Twin and Save. I think it is more of a flex than anything else. It is a small upgrade, and that is about it. I'm not a huge fan unless they give us better armored specials, and I kind of don't want that either. So we'll see. New units may take advantage of this more, but as for the units right now, I have not seen huge advantages to those skills. As far as the near saviors, the Nagis do incredible, and it's because they have AoE resistance built into their kit. The other one that's very surprising is Corrin, and that Divine Vein Stone is excellent and provides support to the rest of the team as well. It is extremely nice. Marnie does win, but it's just barely, and that is the same with against Felix. That unit struggles a lot. As far as losses, I mean, most of these units lose versus Sigurd, so Sigurd is a tough one to do, but remember, the secret to AoEs has always been positioning, and it's no exception with Sigurd. It's just a little different. We saw how, for instance, with Omnitanks, having them positioned in such a way that Sigurd only damaged one unit meant that that unit didn't get Gale Force. That was huge. Using Sather to freeze him out. Things like that are very, very big versus AoE users. The problem is a lot of our conventional things where we pulse down the AoE don't work because of momentum. So it gets trickier, but there's still definite ways, and you always want to worry about positioning and how you're doing things with AoEs.
I am here.
You must be joking.
So you've just watched the utter train wreck that is units trying to survive these two nukes. The question is, who survives both of them? And this is a great example, and this is our newest unit in Nagi. I will say she needs Shield Fighter, absolutely, to survive Felix, which is crazy, but that is the way it goes right now. You're going to watch this entire team come and just crash against Nagi, and nothing happens. One of the issues when units survive Sigurd this many times is that Sigurd is pounding you with AoEs, and the rest of your team is getting hit. That is problematic when you have big-time nukes that then have to go against Fjorm. I know right now there are only a handful of units that do damage on Fjorm, but it's not going to be that way for long. So be on the lookout for that. Breath of Life does help, but it is still an issue. AoEs are really, really hard on the entirety of your team when you're in a save ball. Now, the other thing, you come in and see Felix just ting against this unit just like you saw before. This is the common thing, and it is music to your ears when all of this is going on. You do have to pay attention again to how many units are left over. We have Sigurd to come in and take out Felix, but you need that person who can really do damage, and you'd like that person to be a mythic. It's why I think we slept on Ecthanir just a bit. Having a mythic that can do huge amounts of damage is invaluable, and he will go up significantly in my next rankings of him. The rest of this is the slow plotting that is Duo Saviorville. It is long, arduous, and you have to make very sure that you don't make mistakes. I don't particularly miss this meta, but it is where we're at right now. So when you're going up against these teams, sit down, have a glass of tea, and take deep breaths. It's going to require some patience. You guys can do it though. Let's look at who survives both of these units. These are your folks who survive both, and you'll notice the list is much smaller than the folks who lose. And Summoners, we are looking at a very small group of units that can really handle both of these, but there are some nice surprises in here. I want you to pay attention to Brave Edelgard, because she is about to be a Forma, and you're about to be able to get Shield Fighter on her. That is a huge win and something you should target if you're having trouble in the game right now. Edelgard just keeps winning. The other one, again, Brave Corrin was a huge surprise. Very nice unit. You've noticed I've put Na up here, but I've changed her B skill to Shield Fighter. With Shield Fighter, she is a much better unit, but again, that costs resources. The Nagis are incredible and two of the best, and of course we have Asker. So we're about to move into the tier list, and I need to have just a few seconds on simulations because I get a lot of questions on them because I use them a lot. I need you guys to understand what they are, and simulations in general aren't very good unless you have some sort of basis in reality to compare them to. It's why in this one in particular I wanted so many runs so that I could show you what I was seeing in reality match simulations. It's very important. The other thing that simulations are fantastic at is comparatives. When you take two situations and you wonder which one is better, they are great at that. And because of that, I created kind of a wellness metric, and it's basically taking all of the matchups that these two units have. Well, here it's just Felix and Sigurd, and looking at the percent HP that they have left. And that's a lot of the basis on these. And then we get adjusted per any kind of special things or scenarios that I think are more valuable than the simulations show. That was a lot of words, and if you flip to the next bookmark, I did not blame you. But let's get straight to the tier list from there. Here are your melee frontliners, and first up in D tier, we have the units that did not survive either matchup. And it is unfortunate. These units need a lot of help. Remember, these are melee frontliners. There are ways that you can get around this by using a near savior, for instance, and these units can still perform very well like that. They can still contribute on a team, but they struggle against these two melee threats, which are the driving threats right now. C tier, we have units that make it versus one threat or the other, but not both. They have difficult times really getting the job done. Yes, Ike is down here, and I know you folks are huge fans of Tamara. I showed ways that you can win with both of these. Understand that, but they take a lot of work and a lot of precision to get done. I am not very high on Omnitanks in the meta right this second, so that doesn't help. But that is not to say you can't use these units. These units are still very good. They just take more work than they used to. B tier are units that really either excel in one matchup or the other, or they survive both of them, but not convincingly. So on the bottom tier, you have the not very convincingly. And I love Marnie. I showed that she won both of them. Her HP left was very, very low, and that goes all the way up through until you get to Edelgard, which is kind of the middle of the road there, and she actually did decent enough to where I am going to suggest you get a Forma if you have one available and you're struggling on offense right now. Erica and Sita, we talked about, they can perform, but they have to have a lot of help. You really have to double down on your supports in order for those to get the job done. In Tier A, these are the units that pretty convincingly win both matchups. And I mean, Corrin is definitely on the bottom of that, and Nagi is at the very top of that. This one probably had the biggest range, but these units are very, very good. The reason I put Corrin just a little bit higher was that Divine Vein Stone, which is so good, especially in Astra season where you can't get it through Lumera, for instance. I really want to point out Nagi here, though, because I am very, very impressed with this unit and think she is just stellar. She has aged incredibly well in the current meta. S tier is last, and these units have convincing matchups versus both Felix and Sigurd. It is really stellar how well these units do. I do love the bulwark that Asker has, but we talked about it. You really have to watch out for warping. I thought about bumping him down just for that, but I'm telling you, the matchups are that good. This unit is much, much better than he's getting credit for. Nagi, I mean, you probably have heard how good Nagi is at this point. I didn't realize she was such a good near savior until someone pointed it out and I started looking at her. I have since built Shield Fighter Nagi, and she is truly that good. So what are our takeaways here? And the first is, There are very few critical skills you get in this game. Shield Fighter is one of them, and I really don't think you need more than one Shield Fighter near save, so that's probably a singular copy that you need to go after, but you probably want that, especially if you're a defense fan. But also, I've seen a lot of near save in Summoner Duels because we have so many melee threats, so understand Shield Fighter is an important skill, and there aren't many of those. This is one of them. You need an offensive nuke in order to take out these crazy units on the follow-up. We talked about it, but turn 2 is incredibly important. You have to be able to take on the enemy team once they come at you and don't kill you. We talked about it, but it's why Ecthanir is much better than we thought he was, because the meta wasn't quite there yet. It has shifted, and everything's coming up, dear boy. I didn't talk about it, but player phase is a way you can take some of these units out. In particular, ranged player phase is incredibly good right now. I'm using a hit and run team right now to take out Fjorm, and she has definite counters in the meta and is common enough that she is an issue. So keep that in mind. Any kind of hit and run or Gale Force team is a great 1-2 punch to have versus your near savior, so that you can take on multiple types of teams. Defenses are fairly strong right now, so just keep that in mind and be ready for it. The last thing I want to talk about is armors in general, and understand we've talked so much in the community about how you never +10 any units, and I think armors are the exception. In particular, bulky armors. I wouldn't double down on speedy armors, to be honest with you, but I feel like IS has shown a commitment to continue to give them amazing skills. We can look at Brave Edelgard as an example, but I mean, really, if you want an example, look at Arden. Arden is a Gen 1 unit and has amazing HP, but because that unit can have Shield Fighter on there, that unit is still viable in the meta right now, which is nutty. Armors are expensive, but they last a long time. I've talked about it, but very shortly I'll have the Forma guide up for those upcoming Formas, including Brave Edelgard, who I think is a clear choice with Shield Fighter. I have my current Forma build up right now. If you want to go check that out as to what skills you want on these current units, that is there. Members, you are amazing. Thank you so much for all that you do. Take care and schedule an appointment with your FEHologist real soon.